You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fire play education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fire play. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, Firebugs. Welcome back to this podcast for Rain of Fire. And you have Miss Kitten tonight as your host. And I have a really cool fire top from Omaha. I think I got that right. Conrad, welcome to my dungeon virtually. And thank you so much for your time and for speaking to me tonight.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled and honored to be here.
Yay. Before I go into the whole fire thing, maybe you can just tell the listeners how you got started in kink and became less vanilla than the rest of the world and what that journey looked like for you.
You know, I think a lot of it came out during my teenage years. I just didn't understand it and didn't, know enough to focus and use it. I remember handcuffs. I remember giving spankings and giving orders, making women flash in public, a lot of kinky things when I was younger. But finding the right partner really helped. And meeting my partner allowed that space to really double down, to learn and grow. And we, grew in impact together a lot and stepped a lot more into the public spotlight, started going to more events. And I actually started using impact lightsabers to stand out in the community because everybody kind of does the same thing. You use the same implements in this community. So it was a really spectacular show. It kind of, was a nice, drew your eye, which led me to fire. I saw people doing events at fire at events, and that fire would always stand out, that flame. A lot of basic things was being done in my community, things like cupping and, you're streaking, just simple things like that. But I always kind of wanted to see more of the potential that fire had. So I kind of doubled down. I started learning more about fire flogging. I learned more about the fire bubbles, things like that. And that led me to where I am today.
I love that. I also didn't realize I was obviously kinkier than I believed when I was younger. I was chatting on a podcast the other day and somebody said, yeah, when they were like 16, 17, they used to torture her brother's friends. And I was like, oh my God, I did that to my cousin for years. Like he was literally like my first sub. He was like, he followed orders and I was bossing him around from like 12. So I think we all have a bit of kinky history that it takes us a while to formulate where we're going in our heads. But I love hearing about the journey and how other people remember it. Thank you for sharing with me. Before we go into fire, you've mentioned something that I've never heard of before, and I have to stop you right there because number one, I just absolutely love Star Wars. So tell me about the lightsaber thing. Talk to me more about that, please.
So I had been buying lightsabers. I go to Star Wars conventions, things like that. Occasionally I'll dress up in cosplay, and I had bought a nice dueling lightsaber where you can actually fight with it and hit pretty hard. So one day I just took it out, and it's a thick PVC piece, about 1 inch thick, 3/4 of an inch, depending on what you buy, and it's got a nice LED at the base, and it lights up. I'm happy to show you some photos. I've got some wonderful ones on my FET profile, but it is described like a caning from people that have taken it. I've got actually 4 or 5 different sabers, different colors. I can do, the reds if you want the Sith, or blues, just depending. But I'll do, usually 2 different colors at once, just to give some really nice, colors in the photos.
Amazing. I am currently Googling lightsabers that are designed for battle. Because I have to add one to my kit. That looks absolutely amazing. I think that's so much fun. We did some stuff with the fire whip the other night, and the pictures look a little bit like a lightsaber. And I was like, how do you recreate that? So you just answered my question there. And I think that sounds super fun. So you have just to clarify, so that I don't make bad kitten mistakes and hurt somebody, you need to find one that can actually be used for dueling. They come in different models, or
I wouldn't buy one that comes from Disney or from Hasbro or somebody. I would buy.
Okay.
There's custom ones you can get off of Etsy, or a couple of companies, Ultra Sabers or things like that. There's some really cool, unique things. I find a lot of my implements on Etsy, be it Impact, or I started with a lot of my fire stuff from Etsy as well.
I've had a look at Etsy's fire stuff. We, unfortunately, where we based, you'd have to sacrifice a kidney to pay the shipping. So Etsy gives me a lot of ideas, but then I have to find a craftsman here to make it for me, because we don't. You'd have to wait like 18 months, and literally, like, I'd have no kidneys left if I bought my king stuff off Etsy. It's super hard. Unfortunately, our postage is like ridiculously expensive. So but they have some great stuff. I'm always pouring through there. But I love the lightsaber idea. Thank you for sharing that with me. I've stalked your profile a bit, so I have seen the cool pictures. So they are really, really, really looks like fun. And I was dying to ask you what it felt like, and now I have my answer. So hopefully, if you watch my profile, you will see some lightsabers in the future, and know that you caused that in African life. So let's talk a little bit about fire, because I see on your profile you've got some exciting things with fire. The one thing that really caught my eye, it looks like you spanking with fire.
Yeah, so I'll do a lot of spanking with fire. I will use the fire bubbles. I use butane. I'll mix it with dish soap and water, and then put the bubbles on somebody's either behind or their usually their chest, and then I will take a handful of the bubbles, ignite it in my hand, and then lower it and spank either their chest or their behind.
I've never seen this in real life. I've seen a couple of videos of it, but I've never seen this in real life. I have nothing to relate back in theory. So I have a lot of questions, and you're my guy. How thick is the water? Like how thick is the consistency of the dish soap in the water?
Honestly, I just put a few drops in. I don't want to disclose too much, because I don't want everybody at home trying to burn down their house. But you just put a can of, I put 2 or 3 cans of drops of dish soap in there, and then I'll just put some butane in there, and it'll create some bubbles. I'll take the handful, and I just, honestly, for a nice show to start the night, I will just take the handful of bubbles, light my hand, and just twirl it in the air for a minute. And unfortunately, I'm the guy at the party who always smells like arm hair that's burnt. So
I'm learning about the smell of burning hair. What I've also learned about the smell of burning hair is it's the gift that keeps on giving. You get to do it twice. So when you smell it the first time, it's not over. Wait, there's more. When you go and shower later that night, you get to smell it all over again, and it starts the whole process of my whole bathroom smells like burning hair. So I'm definitely learning that there's a nice smell to that. It's like there's like a reassuring smell, but it can also be super overpowering, and it's not something that I want to do on a continuous basis. The good news is I've burnt most of the hair off my arms already from playing with fire, so I don't have to worry about burning my own hair, just other people's now.
I do offer the fire bubbles as a nice alternative to, waxing sometimes.
Well, there's that, and it's quite a spectacular, public waxing is not showy, and waxing with fire bubbles could be could be a super good show. I've never seen it. We've never seen anything. We've never seen any of the fire fleshing. You called it something else, I think. I know it as fire fleshing, where you rub the wand over the human being.
Okay, so yes, that's another thing that as I've been listening to your podcast, there's so much different terminology that we're calling the same things, and it's hard to keep up sometimes.
And now imagine the poor kid in Cape Town who's never seen any of this and trying to put it together in pieces. So you can just imagine the chaos that is my balcony, where I'm trying to practice all of these things at the moment.
So you had one the other day where they were talking about doing fire massages, and what I call a fire massage was completely different than that. So what I do for a fire massage is I have 2 wet towels. I'll lay one of the wet towels down on somebody's back, and then I'll put another wet towel, damp, wrung out, on top of the other towel. And then I will put alcohol on it, usually 70% to start. And I'll light that on fire and let that burn until they can start to feel the heat. And then I'll put that out and let it continue to sit for 2 or 3 minutes, because the heat continues to build on that second blanket underneath, actually against your skin.
Okay.
And then I will usually step up to the 90% alcohol because it burns so much hotter and faster. That one warms up faster. I've bought them for this one just because I wanted to know what it felt like. And it was like a wet heating pad is how I would describe it.
Okay, cool. I've seen that there's some Chinese medicine connotations linked to this. If you Google that hot towel, burning towel thing, you can definitely see some people of Eastern descent causing raging fires on people's backs. It looks super cool. It's super dangerous. I'm trying to keep my fire in minimal doses at the moment, like really small. I'm working off earbud wand type things so that we really don't kill anybody. And most of the things in Africa are quite flammable. So I'm really trying to keep my sources small at this point. But it looks really, really cool. What safety precautions come with that? Because I've even seen on FET some videos where they've put the towel over and the fuels run through the towel and carried on burning on the towel underneath. So I'm imagining that there are a couple of safety precautions that come with the towel fire story.
So, I always have a nice wool blanket with me just in case I have to smother anything. I always have a fire extinguisher, and I always have a pile of extra wet towels just in case anything needs to be smothered. I don't want to blast somebody with the fire extinguisher. That's in case it's spreading on the ground or anything. But for the body, I want to have that blanket to either wrap the body in or the wet towels to help smother that fire in.
I'm not going to lie to you. There's 2 things that really attract me with fire, and they actually have nothing to do with fire. First is the fact that you get to smother people with a blanket. Like I don't know why, but I'm really enjoying that. It's becoming like a little bit of a fetish. I make my pony practice with me often, and I don't think it's got anything to do with fire safety anymore. Now I think it's completely a separate kink on its own. I'm really enjoying the smothering part. And then the other was a snuff bin. I just thought the whole name was super cool, and having a super cool metal dustbin in my dungeon that I could call the snuff bin sounded like really amazing. So I have a snuff bin. It's never been used for fire, but I have one because I just think it's one of those things that I needed to have. And I also think that having your extra safety and knowing how to use it is super important. So I'm glad to hear that you have a couple of different plans. In my limited experience with fire, it all happens very quickly. So having something that is reasonably close and accessible is important. What we've also been discussing quite a bit of, it's become quite evident in my journey with fire, which is, like I said, very limited, is how active your bottom's got to be. Because, obviously you're relying on them to give you feedback and to tell you that the fire is getting too hot and to tell you that it's enough or to take it off. How do you encourage that with your bottoms? And what are some green flags in looking for people to bottom for you? Because obviously, you can't just have people telling you what you want to hear. They need to be telling you the truth in the situation to prevent an accident.
Absolutely. I always start small. I always start with the lower fuels just to make sure that, hey, this is what it is. This is the basics of it. I try and explain the principles of why it behaves the way it does. And then, I will give them the smaller fuel. This is how it feels. And then I will step up to, say, with the fire massage, the higher fuels. That way they can understand that they need to communicate and tell me ahead of time that they need to actually be paying attention to what's happening and not just laying there enjoying the experience, and I will, check in constantly saying, can you feel it yet? Can you feel it? Can you feel anything? With the fire flogging, I will have to spin a lot of the alcohol out first, and then I will go with the bottom. And I do have to, pull that flame away every, 10, 15 seconds just to make sure that bottom is not on fire, because I don't want to accidentally let them, burn while I'm putting on a show with that flogger. And the bubbles burn so fast, it's literally like a 5-second ordeal. So luckily that one, I'm not terrified of that one. I'm not, worried about that spreading. I just want to make sure people aren't near the fuel source when they're doing those things.
Yeah. Okay. Great point about not being near the fuel source, because you obviously got a whole bunch of butane in bubbles and you don't want the source to be next to the bottom in case they shake their hand or something or get a fright. I'm making notes because these are really important things to hear, and there's nothing better than listening to other people's experience to help guide you, especially if you can't get a mentor. So be afraid, because I think every fire person that's spoken to me is now terrified that I'm single-handedly going to burn down South Africa, and it could happen. There's always a potential. What the great news is, I'm really good at smothering stuff, so I have that down pat, and I can smother a lot of things. So I might not be able to get the fire, but hopefully I get the fireman in the whole lot, because that's also like a secret fetish of mine at the moment. You said that the fire massage you called something else. So what do you call it when you work with the wands with the sticks with the wicks on the top of them? Or I don't quite know how else to describe it.
We'll call that streaking, usually where they're rubbing the wand down the body or something with the coconut oil over them, just so they can feel the heat on the body, things like that.
Okay, and you use an oil just to keep the skin moist underneath so that the heat it travels better, or is there another reason?
So when I do my cupping and the streaking, I will rub the body down with coconut oil just to give it more of a massage and a relaxing experience. And then the coconut oil also helps me to move the fire cups around to give a deeper tissue massage while they're still sucked to the body. And it just gives an extra barrier from that fire when I'm rubbing that wand over the skin.
And I've seen your some pictures on your profile. You have like really small ones, and they're not like the ones with the marshmallows on the end. Oh, I must sound like such a novice. They're really, really small, and there's one picture of them in a cross with one over the other. Can you tell me a little bit more about those?
So those are just kebabs that were wrapped in Kevlar.
Okay, I thought they were really cool. You really impressed me with those. I was like, they look like kitten-size ones. They look like a great idea for a kitten who is not great with these huge, big marshmallow tops.
They're nice to just hover over the body, rub down the thighs or, near the body. And they hold more fluid than, they don't burn out as quick as some of the other things. I like the Kevlar better than the marshmallows just because I have to replace the gauze on those marshmallows all the time.
Okay. I've only lit my marshmallow once and it already needs to be replaced. So I hear that. Like
Yeah.
you probably get more than one out of yours. I also was a little bit like, and this is my sharps brain going crazy. I was a little bit like, how sanitary is it to rub the marshmallow things on body hair and then the body hair singes and the singed hair sticks to the marshmallow thing and then you use it on another person or you put it into the bucket with fuel. So I was a little bit like that, but I think that's a sharp's brain thing, and I need to relax a little bit about that.
You're not necessarily wrong. I have probably 10 of the marshmallow wands in my bag just so I can rotate them out and use, or, but I think a lot of the fire does help to keep that sanitary, but, I've never overthought that one, I guess.
I think it's a sharp's brain thing. I think you get so used to disinfecting and cleaning that everything becomes a potential hazard. So I do think I keep telling myself that the fire would burn it out and it would just be bits of coal, bits of ash, and it would be fine. But I'm not sure I have convinced myself yet. So at this point, I'm going to need a marshmallow for every person that I do, which could make fire quite expensive. Although I'm not sure how many people are going to trust me, so it might be a couple of years before we need a kit that big. How do you when you're playing with fire and you are negotiating with your bottom, what are some things that you are discussing beforehand that are super important that you can't do without?
I have to know the medical conditions. Just, I want to make sure that they're not going to put themselves in a situation, maybe a skin condition or a heart condition, things like that. With any impact, any top-bottom situation, medical should be on that list.
I love that. I'm a sharps player, so that ticks my box. I also want to know what medication they're taking.
Yep.
What substances they're on, and I have a zero substance policy, which I would imagine extends to fire as well.
Absolutely. If somebody's standing there barely able to stand on their own 2 feet because they've been drinking all night, I'm certainly not going to allow them near or to bottom at all.
Is that something that you experience a lot in your kink spaces where you are? That alcohol is allowed at your parties and is part of a kink party environment?
So we have to share a lot of spaces here where I live, and a lot of those spaces are unfortunately at bars. So we do have to deal with alcohol being in our presence. I know my group specifically, we call out, we're not interested if you're intoxicated, we'll ask you to leave, things like that. But yeah, there are people who will stand around with drinks in their hands. Usually tops, we don't allow them, to top at all if they've been drinking at all or doing any of the hard drugs, things like that.
I'm glad to hear that the community supports sober play. I think it's hard to choose to be sober in these situations sometimes, and it's nice to hear that the community backs that. So I'm pleased to hear. It's very difficult in my community because a lot of the time the alcohol sales are what's funding the clubs. So to remove the alcohol sales means that you're going to the club is going to battle to do business and to stay open. So it's a bit of a catch-22. So I think the serious kinksters are very clear about their boundaries and what they're expecting. But for newbies, it's kind of like a 6-month integration period where they've sort of got to learn that we're actually not going to touch them if they've been drinking heavily or if they've been drinking at all. I have a zero tolerance. I just don't believe you should be sticking sharp things in people without 100% clarity of mind. And it's a consent thing. But yeah, so, and also our spaces are sometimes very much swinger kink overlapped because it's the only space we can get to share. And the swinger crowd often has a pay your entrance fee and drink as much as you like for the evening, which makes it difficult to have open topping available. So we don't do a lot of that. But it's interesting to hear how other communities deal with it as well.
It seems like anytime we have somebody who's overindulged, it seems they were either a brand newbie or a swinger.
Yeah, I think our swinging community encourages a lot of drinking. They often have, most of the clubs have a pay an X amount fee and your drinks are free the whole night. And you can go and have 30 shooters at the bar or whatever. Like, it's encouraged. Drop your inhibitions and enjoy your night. So unfortunately, it doesn't correlate well with kink. And the only time we ever really have issues is when somebody has been drinking and somebody said no, or they've been drinking and they've managed to slip through the cracks and have an experience that they then regret later. So we've got stricter about it, and it's nice to see that. I just like to hear that your community is supporting community and spreading the don't drink and kink, please.
You can't give honest consent, or you can't give honest feedback if you're in a scene if you're intoxicated.
I think the timing for fire is something that really impresses me. I keep harping on about it, but it's something that I'm finding incredible because you don't have, you've got 3 different stages of that burn, and the first 2 stages are super fast. And they're over before you know it. And then when that fire is on that human being, it's also super fast. Like, I can do needles, I can have a snack, I can answer my phone, I can do 55 things and then throw another needle, which you can't do when you're in the presence of fire. So I think that it's quite awe-inspiring to watch how you guys work with the fire and how frigging amazing your timing is. Is that something that gets better, or I think what I'm asking is, am I always going to be this slow? Or am I going to get faster? Is this something that when you relax a bit more gets easier?
I think the more you play with it, the more you'll get relaxed with it, and you'll understand how the fire behaves. I do, my cupping and massage and things indoors, but like the butane bubbles, I will always do those outside because it's a bigger, taller fireball. But you need to be cognizant of the wind in that situation. What way is the wind blowing? Is this going to blow back in my face and burn my hair off? Is it too windy to do fire at all today? Those are things you also need to be cognizant of while you're doing fire. But the more you play with it, the more you'll understand how the fire will typically behave, and you'll become more confident with it.
I hope so. I will, when we finish this, I'll send you a picture of my very tiny little fire sticks. They're very cute. They're literally like an upgrade from earbuds. But they're what I'm using to get used to it. So I do believe in downsizing until you are completely effet with the equipment. So I'm hoping that it gets better, because it's so captivating and it's so incredible to be able to hold it and to move it. And I'm just moving it from one wand to another one. Like, there's nobody involved anywhere near me, except for the safety man with the blanket and the wet towel who's hovering over me, waiting for me to burn something. So when
I think if you get a post office box, I think people will start bombarding you and sending you lots of free fire things to, sample.
I would love free fire things to sample. We can't get Kevlar here very easily. Well, we can get it, but again, I have to sacrifice a digit or a kidney to buy it. Yep. I think it's probably about $100 a meter.
Wow.
So it's really expensive.
It sounds like you have plenty of friends in the States now. We can certainly work on shipping a few things.
I'm in for that. I wanted to ask you about your fire floggers and what you make them out of and how many strands they have and what that relates to and how important that is in using them.
So my first fire flogger that I have has four falls, and it's made of Kevlar, double looped. So I will soak it in a jar here of the 70% alcohol for, an hour usually. And it's not terrible heavy when it goes in, when it's dry, but when it comes out, it's quite a bit heavier because of all the alcohol it's absorbed. So you need to make sure that you practice while it's dry, get a good feel of it while it's dry, and then maybe soak it in water so you understand the heavy difference before you actually light it on fire. Just need to be confident on how that swings and how it's going to fall and things like that.
You spoke a bit about getting rid of some of the excess fuel when you start. So when we play with a fire whip, the first sort of 60 seconds of swinging the fire whip is just to get rid of the extra fuel in the fire whip, and you can actually crack it into the air and make shapes with it and do stuff like that. But before we do anything for a scene, we and there's quite a bit of spray that comes off that, and that the fuel that we're using is quite a bit heavier than the alcohol. So when you're using alcohol, I'm just imagining sort of like quite a big spray. How do you mitigate that, and what safety risks do you put in place to help you?
So a lot of times I'm performing on concrete. If I'm not performing on concrete, I'll have a wool blanket down or a welding blanket down. I will take the flogger out and I will spin it for a good 90 seconds just to get the alcohol out. I'll spin it and then I'll light it on fire, and then I will spin it again just to continue to get more of that alcohol out before
okay,
actually.
So you're actually spinning it before you even light it. So you're already preparing it before you've even set it on fire. Okay, that's super clever and a super thing that I need to write down on my safety list. That's very handy. Okay,
it just honestly depends on how much the flogger absorbs too. If it's going to hold a ton of liquid, then you're going to need to spin more out before you touch the bottom. If it's a thinner Kevlar and it doesn't hold so much fluid, then you may only need to squeeze it out or flip it out, a couple of rings before you light it on fire.
Okay, cool. And when you're flogging this person, is the heat touching the person, or are the falls of the flogger actually touching the person?
So I will actually, once I spin it out, I'll actually approach the bottom, and usually I'll spin going, I suppose that would be clockwise. So I'll go touch the bottom of the bucket jeep and go up the body, and then I will approach it again for pull it away for a few seconds just to make sure that they're not on fire, so that there's nothing lingering. The fuel isn't clinging to their skin, anything like that. And then I'll approach it again. I actually do make contact with the falls of the flogger, so they are actually feeling the heat and the impact.
Have you been flogged? Has somebody flogged you before?
No, I have not been flogged. I bought them for a lot of things, but I have not bought them for much impact.
Okay, I'm just curious to understand what it feels like. I've been flogged in my entire kink career. I've been flogged once, and it wasn't something I super enjoyed. I probably it was a demo. I quite enjoyed the demo part of things. I'm a bit of an exhibitionist, but the flogging wasn't something I would write home about. And flogging is the one kink that I've just never picked up. It's just something that I've just never enjoyed. I find it difficult to communicate with the person who I'm flogging. I find like they're miles away from me. It's not very intimate. And then I feel like I spend more time over their shoulder checking in with them than I do actually hitting them. And I want to tell you, people who flog, you guys are super fit. And as a top, it's super hard work. And I'm not sure I'm up for that much hard work. Just going to be honest.
So the girls that have bought them for this, they say it's not like a really hard impact. It's more that it's grazing your body. It's more of a sensation play is how I would describe it. What's more intimidating is the sound of the fire flogger. I mean, you've heard the whips, how those sounds can go, but the fire flogger is constantly moving, and it's just got this vicious sound to it. And it's very intimidating with, them not looking at it. They don't know when it's going to hit them, things like that. The sound is fantastic of the fire floggers.
I love the two things I love about the whip is the sound, because it literally, it's as close to having a real lightsaber as possible. It literally goes in the air. It's fantastic. And the feeling of the drag that the whip gets when it's heavy with fuel and it's light. It's really quite incredible to feel that. It's a totally different sensation than swinging a whip normally. It just drags through the air. It doesn't slide through the air like it normally does. So I really loved those two things. I never conceptualized the fact that the flogger would make such a sound, but you're right. That must feel really cool. And I think you've got to be quite, like any of this, you've got to be quite fit, because when you stop moving and those floggers face down, you're going to end up burning your arms. And I'm only keep repeating that because this is my latest experience with fire.
Yeah,
travels up.
So when I'm spinning out the fuel, I try and put on a show. So I'll go slow to make it, stall in the air and then fall down, and things to make the falls, do more of a show. And when I was first starting out, yes, it came back and hit my arm, and I was, it was hard not to instinctively let go of something when it touches you on fire.
Yeah, does that ever get easier, or do you always still want to drop it when it touches you like that?
No, it gets easier. Now I learned to change my body position or something else, and luckily I've never dropped fire like that.
Okay, we always play on cement, so at least if I need to drop the whip, I can drop the whip and put it down. So it's the floor will take it if I need to let go. So at least I have that. But it's a super cool experience. So you're coming to teach for us at Rain of Blood, and we're at Rain of Fire. You can see that I've got needles on the brain today. And we're super excited to have you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the classes that you're going to offer us?
I don't know that we've talked yet to officially seal that up, but I've offered to teach fire massages, cupping, and the bubbles.
I'm super excited about the fire cupping. So that's something that I definitely am up for and really keen to see. Fire cupping has a bit of a weird history with me. It's in all my consent work that I've done. There is a terrible story that went around FetLife about 6 years ago about fire cupping gone wrong. And ended up with a person going to hospital and ended up costing this person a huge amount of money and a huge amount of time off work. So it's my favorite consent story because it identifies a whole lot of risk areas, like knowing which hospital you're going to, if you have medical aid, who's paying for the injury. So I'd really like to be able to take fire cupping and just put a different spin on it in my own head, because fire cupping's always been the super dangerous thing because of the story, and because I picked it up and used the story for 5 years as a good example of being prepared in a situation. I've never seen it here. We have no experience with it. We've been trying to buy fire cups for the last about 8 weeks, and we can't get those either. So we were eventually wondering if you could use purity jars or something else for fire cupping, but we were told that that's not a good plan. So desperate to see your fire cupping. What does it feel like when you get fire cupped?
So it's very relaxing. You just have to lay there in the moment. Honestly, it feels like a tentacle on your back, really. Depending on the alcohol that's used, if you use a lower percentage alcohol, you're not going to get the amazing suction, the big red rings like you would with a higher percentage alcohol. But you'll still get the feeling, the relaxation. I had a friend with some kidney disease, and she asked me to do cupping on her kidneys all the time because she said it would feel good. She would feel the toxins being pulled out, things like that. It's just a very relaxing experience.
And you spoke a bit earlier about moving the cups around on the back, so I would imagine that's like quite an intense suction pull. Can that be sadistic, or is that something that's only ever sensual?
I haven't tried it sadistically yet, but I'm sure I could find a way to make that happen. I like to, I'll do 2 of the big cups and then move them around, specifically like the shoulder blades in the middle of the back, just because it's got such a good suction. It gives a much deeper tissue massage than just, rubbing your fingers or anything on there. Are you familiar with blood cupping at all?
Very familiar with blood cupping.
I have a friend who does blood cupping. So, I'll do my fire massages, clean the cups, and then I give them to her for the rest of the night. And then she'll do her one blood cupping scene, and then we're done with the cups for the day.
I was gonna say we don't massage. The blood cupping is not so much about the massaging.
Correct.
It's more, and the suction's super important because you need to fill the cups. But I have cheat cups. Mine are like plastic, and they've got a suction top. So we just use them after a needle scene to pull blood.
And blood's not my forte, so I let her stick to the blood aspect. But it's very cool, and you've got to understand the concept of how that suction works and why it works, over your scalp.
And for the blood cupping, are you with those cups, are you also using fire to suction them?
Yeah, so you've got to use that fire wand to heat up the cup and then quickly put it over that slit over the
and then that'll
cut.
pull. Oh, that's so
Correct.
cool. That must be quite an incredible thing to see. How hot are the cups when they go down on the back?
So it depends on what alcohol you're using. The 70% is not going to be terrible. The 91%, it's not going to be burning you, but it is going to be noticeably a little bit warmer. But that 91 is going to remove more of the oxygen, causing more of the suction with the cup when you put it down.
Okay, so I have a sadist question because my brain is working overtime. If you don't use oil and then you had to slip the cups to move to do your massage, would that not be more intense and more sadistic than using an oil base underneath?
So I've tried to move the cups without oil underneath of them, and they just kind of break the suction. The oil just allows a little bit of that. Reduces the friction enough. Go ahead.
You ruined my fantasy a little bit there, because in my head it was going to be like really torturous and it was really gonna inflict pain. But I can understand from a science perspective that you'd need something to help that glide. Otherwise, it would just stop pulling and let go. How do you take the cups off? Because my cups have got a little lever at the top that you press. I mean, they're super Chinese. Produce. I was going to use another word, but I won't. They're super Chinese. They come from Shein. They're not the most amazing set of cups ever. And they've got a little like a little cap at the top, and I can release the suction there. So with glass cups, how do you remove the suction from them?
So what I'll do is I'll put my hand on the top of the cup, and then I will put my finger at the base of the cup and push into the bottom skin, and that allows air into the cup, which will break the seal.
Okay. I'm now going to try that with my blood cups when I do blood cupping, just to see. I have to test everything for science. I'm really excited. I'm excited about seeing the blood cupping. I'm excited about seeing you guys play with all this fire. I feel so left out and so uneducated in my little space. And I just really love the fact that you guys share all this stuff. And I'm also, you mentioned it earlier, I'm finding the whole journey that there's so many different ways of describing the whole thing, that it will be nice for the fire community to connect as well over this conference and see everybody's different explanations and different ways of doing things, because I think everybody has their own technique, and I think that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody share it and being part of it, even if I'm not allowed to burn things myself.
Absolutely. It was insanely hard to find people who would talk about fire flogging. I lucked out. I found a fire top down in Florida who was, wonderful, willing to share some information, some secrets, things that he had been doing, which was able to help, further my kink journey as well. So it is important for tops to share their experiences, their journeys as well, not just the successes, but the failures. There was an article that came out about a fire flogging incident in Florida earlier this year that, really gave me pause and made me think about, wow, what do I need to do differently so this never happens? So sharing your failures is just as important as sharing your successes in this community.
I think I've learned in my sharps journey that the failures are going to happen. It's going to happen. There's no way to prevent it completely. But being able to communicate with others and to share the information that you have and to listen to the information that they can share with you really empowers you. And I think the one thing that I've learned from kink is if you're coming into this game thinking that you're not going to be the one who fucks up, at some point you're going to fuck up. It's going to happen. So I think part of the kink is the accountability side and being able to say, like, I did this shit and it happened to me and this is what I'm going to do better next time and this is how I'm going to mitigate it. But even the mitigation is not going to prevent an accident from happening in the future. There's just too many uncontrollable variables. So yeah, and I've really been empowered by listening to everybody's journeys and how they started and, how they found something they love. I think the best part of doing these podcasts is really hearing the joy when you guys talk about the kinks that you love. It's super cool. It's super cool to hear that you're having fun as adults and that there's a part of your life that you're letting go and you are sharing with others. And that's great. And also the community thing for me, hearing that, there's these communities that exist that are doing these crazy things and having success with them, but having success by sharing spaces with other people. I think that's just beautiful. So I get super empowered by that. And I've loved chatting to you tonight. And I am going to finalize your classes before we finish the call. But I'm going to say good night to my listeners. So first of all, thank you so much, Conrad, for your time and for chatting to me tonight.
Thrilled to be here, and I really look forward to doing those classes with you guys.
Awesome. And then to my listeners, if you haven't got a ticket, guys, we have an early bird special. It's almost done, Z's. So get your ticket. I don't know what you're doing with your life if you haven't got a ticket to Rain of Fire. We have some great fire classes. We also have some great classes for bottoms and some great classes for tops specifically. And we also have a scholarship program. So if cost is a barrier to participation, please reach out to our team. We'll help you and sort it out for you. And we really look forward to seeing you in a couple of months at Rain of Fire. And from my dungeon in Cape Town, South Africa, lots of love and kitten kisses.